My name is Will Berelson. I'm a professor in this Department of Earth Sciences. DDT is a human-made chemical compound which has been used back in the 50s and 60s quite extensively because it is a very effective insecticide. People used to put it on themselves to keep from getting bitten by bugs. It's used a lot in agriculture, so it's been sprayed on agricultural fields. It was used quite extensively in the 50s and 60s until it was discovered that this is a chemical that's very bad for certain, higher level organisms. That includes humans, but it's was especially noted that the eagle population in Southern California was in a big decline. And it turns out the reason was because the eagles were eating fish, and those fish were eating other fish, and those fish, so on down the food chain. In that process of things eating other things, eating other things, eating other things, certain chemicals get concentrated and more concentrated as you move up the food chain, meaning that the eagles that were near the top of the food chain got very high concentrations of DDT, which was very bad for their ability to make eggs that wouldn't crack. And so DDT and certain other DDT compounds are not good for a lot of life on the planet. So DDT was washing from this chemical company through the sewage pipes out into the ocean for years and years. And so, as you can imagine, there's a big amount of DDT right off of Palos Verdes where the pipe empties out into the ocean. And that's been there since the 50s and 60s. And then in the 70s and 80s, they thought we better do something about this. But there was also DDT out in the deeper water in the mud between LA and Catalina, where it's 900 meters deep. So how did that DDT get all the way out there? So we took an interest in molecules that are in the breakdown chain, somewhere down the line. Some of these molecules are potentially soluble. That means that soluble means that they are happy to exist in water, dissolved in water. What does that mean? Other molecules, and the DDT in particular, is not happy dissolved in water. It wants to stick to particles and stay stuck. So DDT in the mud is there because it sticks onto particles and stays in the mud. But if one of these breakdown products is soluble, then it's happy enough to be in the water, then it could form somewhere in the mud, but then move through the water and come back out into the ocean somewhere where it could then contaminate more life in the ocean. So we said, let's look and see, are these soluble DDT products in the mud between LA and Catalina? That's what we thought was an important thing to answer. As you move down into the mud, we think about what are the chemicals that we can measure that tell us something about the chemical environment. Iron is a really good chemical to measure. Sulfide is a really good chemical to measure. Ammonia is a really good chemical to measure. So those are the things that we measure because it tells us something about how stinky the mud is, how reducing the mud is, whether there's oxygen present in the mud. So that's why we measure those things. What we set out to do in this project was just like a trial. Let's just see if we can make this measurement. Can we figure out how to make this measurement? Let's take a few select cores and make some measurements and see what we see. And I guess what I see in the future is potentially, doing this now on a much larger scale.